Hi, welcome everyone. We're getting settled here, letting everyone get into the room. We're going to have a few introduction questions for you in the chat pretty soon. Help us get to know who's here today and help our presenter get to know you a little bit before she gets started. Yeah, thank you for being, hopefully, I have a lot of noise in my background, but I have heard that other people have said that people cannot hear it, but if starts to bleed in, just let me know and I can mute. Yes, thank you. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. We have a few questions. You can tell us a little more about you. What farmers market are you with? And does your market have a story about itself? Is it written down? And hello to those who just arrived. Thanks for coming and joining us today. We have a few questions in the chat as we get started and let people in. We're wondering, what farmers market are you with? And does your market have a story? Is it written down? Hi, Radia. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you so much.
Hi, Helena. Thanks for telling us about your market, Portland Farmers Market. And Alexis from Lane County. Hi, everyone. We just had a few more people join just now. We're just still letting people get into the room. You haven't missed anything yet. And people are just introducing themselves in the chat at the moment. And we have a couple questions for you to help us get to know you. What farmers market are you with? And does your market have a story? Is it written down? And we'll get started in just a minute. We still have people arriving. I'm just going to get these 3 people in who just joined. Hi to those of you who just joined just now. We're only just getting started and people are introducing themselves in the chat. If you haven't seen the questions yet, we have a couple introduction questions you can answer. What farmers market are you with? And does your market have a story about itself? And is that story written down? Okay, and while you all are continuing to introduce yourselves, I'm just going to get started now, get into things. Hi, welcome. This webinar is being hosted by the Oregon Farmers Markets Association, or OFMA. OFMA supports farmers markets across the state with training, advocacy, funding, and promotion. We run workshops and peer learning circles every month. There are lots of opportunities with OFMA to connect and find support from the statewide farmers market community. You can check out our event schedule online and see what's coming next. We hope you'll register and join us again. And we also have recordings of all our past workshops in our YouTube library. Let me share a few things about how our sessions work. My name's Amanda Cross. I'm with OFMA and I'm here as host today. Also here from OFMA is Kendra Graves, who you'll be talking with via the chat window. And These sessions, we like them to be participatory. We have an expert here who's going to share with you, but we're also here for you to share your real experiences and questions about running farmers markets. We want to hear it all. We hope you will be active in the chat and also share your voice. We also ask that you share time and make sure you give space for others to respond to you and ask their own questions as well. Please use the variety of options available. You can type your thoughts in the chat or voice out loud when we have group discussion. We also love to see use of emojis and the reaction button to share a quick sense of how something landed for you or to give affirmation to what you heard. It means a lot to the speakers to get some feedback and see your reactions. And yeah, for any questions for the presenter, please just raise your hand or type them in the chat as you think of them. We'll call on you as we go. So today we get to meet Pamela Oakes, who is the owner of the Profitable Nonprofit. This webinar is the first in a quarterly series of fundraising focused workshops that she's leading for Oregon markets. Today we're going to learn how narrative approaches shift fundraising from merely asking for money to inviting people to join a movement. So hi, Pamela, please introduce yourself and let's get started.
Hello, everybody. So glad that you could be here. And yes, I know that a lot of you are off camera. I really would love it if you could be on camera, if at all possible. Makes it very difficult to talk to a blank screen of names. But anyway, I totally get it. But whenever possible, if you could, come in, I'd love to see all your beautiful faces. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that. I saw a lot of different comments in here, people, why they're joining this. Some are just starting their storytelling skills. Some have it on their website or a part of their story on their website. Some are still developing it. And that's great. And I'm here for all of that. And also, how does storytelling tie in to fundraising? And I know this is part of a series of fund development. And you may be thinking, what does storytelling have to do with fund development? And we will get into that. It really sets the stage and the basis for all of your fundraising activities. So it is critical for that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And as Amanda said, I'm not able to see everybody when I am presenting, but if you have a question at all, don't hesitate to just write it down or unmute yourself and just interrupt me. I'm fine with that as well. But want to make sure that we get all your questions answered. But also, I'll try to be sure to reserve some time at the very end as well to answer any direct questions that you may have. So I know your first question is, who the heck is Pamela Oakes, right? So I have always been in nonprofits. That has been my career choice for all of these many, many years. I started out doing some short-term humanitarian projects, both domestically and overseas. And I did that for a couple of years, and I loved that work. I loved being in community and working with community. And so an opportunity came up many years ago for me to move to Johannesburg, South Africa. That was shortly after Nelson Mandela had gotten out of jail. So yes, I'm really dating myself here. Definitely at the turn of the century. Oh my gosh, that sounds so old. But yes, it was in the early 2000s, right? Right about 1999, 2000-ish. And it was right during that Truth and Reconciliation period and right after post-apartheid. And in order for companies to continue doing business in South Africa post-apartheid, they had to offer workforce development training in terms of equity, diversity, employment equity, gender equity, affirmative action, all of those equity type of trainings that didn't exist under apartheid. So that's how I really cut my teeth on consulting, was working as a corporate trainer, consulting the top 100 companies in South Africa and the bordering countries of Botswana and Zimbabwe as well, in those areas. And what I loved also about that would have been exciting enough, but still had the opportunity to go into the townships and rural villages and initiate self-empowerment projects, which is what I love to do. Again, getting my hands dirty in community, helping communities, empowering communities. And it was while I was living in South Africa that I really started hearing about the work of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, I'm a Pacific Northwest girl, born and raised right here in Seattle, Washington. So I obviously knew who Bill Gates was. But at that time, their foundation had a very small footprint in the city. They wanted all the focus to be on the work that they were doing. And then and now the focus of their work and the focus of the bulk of their endowment is spent on the continent of Africa. So I always think it's funny that I learned more about them living in Africa than I ever did living in Seattle in their backyard. But I thought when I go back home to Seattle, I'd love to work for them. So that's what I did. Came back, ended up working for the Gates Foundation for about almost a decade. And now I'm a grant maker with them. I'm one of those people that says, yes, we will fund your nonprofit. No, we will not fund your nonprofit, right? And why? The why was eye-opening to me. And I realized very quickly there was a disconnect between this hoard of wealth that we are sitting on top of and all of those communities and organizations that had absolutely no access to that wealth because they were completely invisible to not only our foundation, but the major foundations and funders around the country. So I started consulting part-time while I was working full-time to really help empower those communities, particularly marginalized communities, underserved communities, communities of color, communities, organizations led by people of color who traditionally are completely off the radar. And I want to empower them to help them to understand what does it take to get on the radar, to become visible to major funders across the country, how to locate funding for your particular initiative, and how to qualify for that funding. And so my little side hustle just eventually outgrew my full-time gig. So after, here we are 8 years later, doing it full-time now, and work full-time as an organizational development and capacity building consultant, always offering services through an equity and social justice lens. So that's a little bit about me. And so what I want to talk to you today is really about the power of your story. The storytelling is so critical to fundraising. Without that story, people aren't connected as to why they should give, what's important about giving to you, especially when there's so many organizations. So how do you stand out? How do you resonate with those who would follow you? So that the storytelling is really key. We are, as human beings, we're wired to tell stories. We learn more in stories. That's how we make sense of the world. It is that common ground for how we communicate and helping people to understand what we're about. It is that common connection, that connects those authentic human experiences, right? I know some of you had said, oh, we have some stories from people on our website that people can go to, and that's great. Kind of engage your emotions, and stories also trigger our imagination, right? It's through that imagination that we become participants with the storyteller, right? And imagination is what increases empathy and sparks creativity. And when you want people to give to you, that's what you want. You want that empathetic, emotional attachment and connection to what it is that you are doing. So let's talk about where that storytelling starts. It really is birthed in your mission, vision, and values. What I find most often is that when I'm talking with organizations about telling their story, they're talking more about how they do it or what they do. Oh, we have these programs, or your farmer's market. Oh, well, we sell this produce. We work with this many farmers, and we've been selling produce since 1980. That's all well and good, but that is not what inspires people. People aren't inspired by facts and figures. The vision of why you started is what is inspiring. Why do you exist? Not just what do you do or how you do it. Why do you exist? What will the community or the world look like if you fulfill your mission? Your mission is, how will you get to your vision? So the how is, Well, we work with, all these farmers in the area, and we connect with them, and they give us our produce, and we sell it every Saturday or every weekend or whatever. That's how you do, that's what you do. But why do you do what you do? That is what connects and resonates with people. So it could be, when you're telling your story, make sure that's what you focus on, is the why, not the how or the what. Right? It's the why you are doing it. Why are you selling produce at a farmer's market when I could just go to the grocery store? There's a very salient reason for that, right? You might get better quality, you might get fresher quality, you might get more less expensive groceries, right? A lot of reasons, but why do you do it? That is what you really want to focus on in your story. That aspirational vision of why you do what you do. That is where the focus of your story is. And so, yes, in the telling of your story, yes, you may talk about, how you do it. But, we started with 10 farmers, or we started with these local farmers, and now we've grown, or whatever. That's great. That adds to the story, but that should not be the focus of the story. Because ideally, the purpose of your story is to get people to give you money, either donate to you or come buy your produce, right? And so again, to motivate people to give you money, to give up their money and give it to you, it's got to be beyond facts and figures. You have to get to the why. The why is really gets to the heart of people. It elicits that trigger, that emotional, that empathetic response. That's where you want your focus to always be, on that why. You want your story to be aspirational. So it's not like, yes, we are here in this community and we've been here since 1985, and come buy your fruits and veg from us, right? It's like, you want it to be aspirational. It's like, we may only be here on the corner of First and Main right now, but our goal is to be big enough so that we can feed the city of Bend, Oregon, or whatever it is, wherever you're located, right? Is to be able to spread this fresh produce or this quality produce throughout the state, right? You want that aspirate. Where are you going? What is the big vision? That's what gets people excited about. Oh, wow, I want to be involved with you. I want to know where you're going, what's happening with this organization. Always focus on that aspirational big vision, because that's what inspires people. People want to know that your cause is valuable and worthwhile. And if you're just listing facts and figures, then you just kind of meld into all the other facts and figures about farmers markets that people think they know. They probably don't know, but oh yeah, I think I know about farmers markets. And it just becomes all part and parcel of the same thing. And you want to be able to connect with people. That's the key, to connect with people. And it's that big aspirational goal is what really connects with people. And again, that's why personal testimonies are amazing, and why they're so powerful. Those personal stories of people who have whether these are people who have funded you, who have given money to you, or who have supported you. And people love, we're human beings. We love the before and after. We started here. We were just one stall on the corner of whatever. Now look at us. We take up 5 blocks or whatever it is, right? People love the before and after. They love the transformation of where you started, where you're going, and what you could accomplish, right? People love that. And also, when it comes to again, it's all about fundraising. When it comes to people wanting to donate to you, they want to know that their money is going to a good cause, right? So that's another reason why that transformation, that transformative narrative is so impactful, because it's like, yes, we started with one stall that just sold baskets of apples. Now look at us now today. 10 years later, here we are. 15 years from now, this is where we'll be. Watch this space, right? People are excited about that, and they can see that, wow, if I donate to this market, wow, that's what my money will be helping to promote that ideal future that they're telling me about. And that's what you want to make sure is that they understand that because people, if they're not involved in farmers markets as you are, they're not going to know all the ins and outs of what it takes to run a farmer's market, right? But they can understand scale, right? We started here, now we're here, we hope to be there, right? And that transformation. And that's why a story is so impactful, because again, people don't know all the nitty-gritty details of running a farmer's market, but the storytelling is what everybody can resonate to. And they want to know that if they donate to you, that their money will be well managed, that it will be going towards something that can improve the community, benefit them, right? And that's very, very important part of that narrative, is making sure that you convey that to people, that where their money will be going, how it will be spent, and how that money can perpetuate that ideal future. Absolutely. And so the idea of your story, yes, to get it out there, I always like to start with your origin story and it's not just, oh, we started in 1985. No, the origin story of what was the spark that made you or the founder decide to start a farmer's market. Now, you might not be the founder. Maybe your market has been around for a long time, maybe before you got involved. But what was that founder's story? To me, what was the passion to start a farmer's market, right? That is what gets people excited. It's like, was it somebody who had extra produce, who was a farmer and was coming and selling it, or what is it, right? Because those personal stories of why you started and what that passion was to get fresh vegetables to people, or maybe to be able to bring fresh produce in an area that's traditionally a food desert where people had no access. That's what I want to know. What was the passion behind starting this market? I always love that emotional that origin story. That to me is a lot more emotional than we started in 1985, because there's nothing particularly, unless that's your birth year, nothing particularly special about the year you started. But why did you start? The passion behind, what was that spark that made you decide to start this market? And then the story is also to kind of quiet people's doubts. What a story does is, the purpose of it is that as you're telling this story and conveying this story, people have questions in their minds, and they may not always tell you their questions or ask you the questions, but the story is hopefully to kind of waylay their doubts before and answer the questions before they're even asked. Because when it comes to farmers market, whether you've heard it or not, the main question is, why should I go to a farmers market when I can just go up to Albertsons and Safeway and get the exact same thing? You as farmers markets better have an answer for that, right? And there is an answer, whether it's quality, price, benefiting the community, cutting out big business, whatever it is, healthier environments of sustainable foods, whatever it is, right? People have that question in their mind. And so your story should answer the question before they've had a chance to ask it. So it should be talking about in your why you do what you do. You talk about the passion about why you started, but also why it is important that you exist. Why is it important that you exist? And that can't just be for your own personal reasons. It has to be because it somehow benefits the community, benefits the world, benefits Oregon, healthier people, health something, right? Saving money, something. How does it benefit? How does your existence benefit? What benefit is it versus going to a major grocery store chain, right? So it should answer those questions as you talk about it. You should be thinking about kind of waylaying people's doubts about why they should support you, right? And then you always, in your story, want to provide them with the next step. I've seen some wonderful stories out there, personal testimonies, get you all engaged and everything. And then it stops short of, well, what am I supposed to do with all this? Now I'm really excited about your farmer's market, but what do you want me to do with that excitement? Always give people the next step. And that next step should be send us a donation. Click here, make a donation, and go even further, telling people how much they should donate. I like donation buttons that don't just say donate and then people donate whatever. It's like it gives me an option. Here's the click on the $2,000 donation button, the $1,000 donation button, the $500 donation button, or the $200 donation, right? Don't leave it up to me to decide what to give you. Always tell people the next action, right? Because oftentimes, while you may know that you are desperately in need of money, never assume that anybody else knows that. And you might be saying, well, of course people know that. They know the thin margins we work on. No, they don't. People have other things that they're focused on. They're not focused on the thin margins of farmers markets, right? They figure you've been around this long, you must be doing something right. People don't assume that you don't have money or that you're in desperate need of money. People don't assume that, right? And so always tell people the next step to take, whether it's donate here. If you're looking for volunteers, volunteer, call us up today. Come see us, get a free bag of plums or free container of fresh tomatoes if you stop by on Sunday, something. Tell people after you've told them the story, tell them the next step to take, because it is human nature that people will always operate from the lowest level of their comfort zone, right? So when you're asked, so if you ever say, when you just click here to donate, if you don't tell people what to donate, they will donate at the lowest level of their comfort zone, meaning what's really comfortable for them. But think about those times when you've made a donation and you know for a fact that had you really been pressed, you probably could have doubled or tripled your donation, right? And that's almost true of every single donation that's made out there, because people are usually donate at the lowest level of their comfort zone. The key in fundraising is to get people to donate at the highest level of their comfort zone, and preferably to stretch people out of their comfort zone. And people will not stretch out of their comfort zone unless you tell them what we're looking for. Can you donate $500? You know, because if you don't tell me, I'm thinking, well, gosh, I just found, $1.50 and change under the sofa cushion. I'm going to donate that. Since you didn't tell me, you don't seem to care. So I'm giving what's comfortable for me to give, right? And that will always happen if you don't tell people what to give. So always give people that next step of what to do, and preferably tell them an amount to give. We will get into later on in this series on fundraising. How do you determine what amounts that you need, right? That's as you're developing your fundraising strategy, but it starts with the story. At least in the story, give them the next step. And then always give them a person. Call Amanda. Don't just, email this blanket, info at Oregon Farmers Market. People hate that. When people call, I mean, think about you. If you're calling someplace, wouldn't you prefer to call a person, have a person's name and a person's phone number, so that if you don't get through, you have their direct line, their direct phone number, or a name of a person that you can call. Nobody likes to know that if they pick up the phone and call, or if they email, it's just going into the ether. Right? They don't know, is a human being going to pick up? Is a computer going to pick up? Always give people a name that they can connect to, right? That they can get on the phone with if they have questions, that they can have a conversation with. That doesn't have to be, the CEO of your organization. It could be an office administrator, but it's a real person. People will always connect to another person, not some vague, random, who knows what's out there, right? So very, very important. So those are key. You want to engage them emotionally. Usually starts with that story, that emotional passion spark. Quiet their doubts, kind of answer the questions before they're asked, provide them the next step, whether it's donate, volunteer, call us, visit us, come see us, and give them a person's name and contact details. Very important, because that gets them moving to action. They have to do something with the information you told them, not just sit on it. Always be aware of the story that you're telling. Now, this is just what I usually hear from organizations when I'm talking about storytelling. Are you focused on what you are doing, the great work you're doing, or you're just focused on trying to get money? You should be focused, again, on what you are doing, that great aspirational vision of what you are trying to do, how you're trying to transform eating habits, or transform the community, transform Oregon, transform the country, transform farmers, whatever it is. What are you trying to do? What is that big aspirational goal that you are trying to do? And you might think, well, we're just really small. We're not trying to take over the world. That's okay, but you may be small. So maybe what you are doing is trying to provide fresher options for your neighborhood. Maybe that's where you're at, but at least have a bigger goal than just, our goal today is to sell 10 stalks of celery, right? What are you trying to do with this effort, right? And not focused on getting money. Because if you want to, people again are inspired by where you're going, not what you're trying to get from them. And then is your story, do you always tell the story to the same people over and over and over again? You have this develop this circle of supporters or of donors, and you've been using those same donors and supporters for the last 10 years. You have not developed any new donors and supporters in the last 10 years. And you just every time you need money, you just go to the exact same donors and supporters over and over and over and over again. Those donors and supporters may love you, but what they won't tell you is find somebody else. Why am I always the person, right? Don't wait till donors and supporters leave. Until you decide to reach out and expand. Any nonprofit, not just a farmer's market, but any nonprofit needs to be able to continually, regularly reach new people on an ongoing basis. As long as you exist, you have to keep in mind of how are we going to reach new people that have not been reached before. That is the power of your story too. How do we get our story out there to new people who have never heard it before? Right. And oftentimes when you're working, especially if you're small, and you're like, well, we're just here to serve our neighborhood or whatever. It's like, well, why? I live in Seattle, but I've been to Oregon. And if I knew about your farmer's market, next time I'm in Oregon, I might want to stop by. But if you're only thinking, oh, we're not trying to expand and get to anybody else, then nobody else would ever hear about you, whether they're passing through or not. Right. And so you always have to think about, how do we get our story out there to new people on an ongoing, continual basis? That is a challenge of every nonprofit, getting your story continually to new people. And then are you just taking people on a guilt trip? Oh my gosh, farmers markets, we're just desperate. If you don't give money, then hey, you're not going to have fresh apples ever again in your lifetime, and it'll be all your fault, right? People don't want to be guilted into giving, right? Don't put them on a guilt trip. And too often we hear that. It's like, oh, if you don't give today, we're going to close our doors tomorrow. And my thought is, if you can't figure out how to stay open tomorrow, that's on you. Don't guilt me into helping you, right? Instead, I want to be encouraged. I might be, we may be small today, but we have a big vision, and partner with us in this vision and see how far this can grow. Be a part of where we're going. We're headed down the track. If you don't jump on this train right now, you're going to get left behind, right? That's encouraging. That's positive. But don't guilt me or try to manipulate me into giving you money. I will give money to things that excite me, that I'm thrilled about, right? Because otherwise it sounds like you're begging versus inspiring. Begging versus inspiring, right? And if begging worked, you literally could all just stand on the street corner with this sign instead of, brother, can you spare a dime to fund my nonprofit? Brother, can you spare a dime to fund my farmer's market? If it worked to just ask strangers, random strangers, to give you money, that's all you would have to do. But as you know, it takes more than that, because people don't give big money, or don't give a lot of money or sustainable funding to just random strangers. Part of your story is to draw people into closer and closer relationship or connection to your organization. That's why people give money, because they feel some connection, some support. It's like, I didn't know this farmer's market exists, but oh my gosh, I live in that neighborhood, or I'm moving through that neighborhood, so I want to support them, right? Or something along those lines, that there is a personal connection to your organization, a personal relationship or something, right? And again, you want to have that rallying cry, come on, let's go, let's do this, not, oh, well, woe is us, if you don't give, we're out of here, right? Make sure it's your story is a rallying cry, not a death knell, right? Very, very important. And again, what you want to be able to do is focus on the transformation. Now, you might be thinking, we sell fruit and vegetables. What transformation are we accomplishing here, right? We're not taking, taking starving people and giving them food, or sending kids to college. What transformation are you talking about? There is some transformative something that you are doing, whether it's transforming people's ideas about food, transforming people's options for what food they have available, transforming a neighborhood that didn't have fresh fruit and produce, right? There is something there. That idea of that before and after of what happened, what has changed because you exist, is very, very powerful. And typically for nonprofits, there is that sense of, if you are asking for money from the public, then there is a sense there that it's implied that you are providing some sort of public good, which is why you qualify as a nonprofit, because there is some greater good, some public good that the government recognizes and is going to give you a tax break for. So you have to focus on that. What is that? What betterment or what change, what transformation is happening because you exist? That should be part of your story, right? Because true enough, people can get apples at a lot of different places. Why should they get apples from your farmer's market, right? Because if buying your apple from your farmer's market means that there will be fresh fruit in a food desert, and my supporting that will make sure that children in that neighborhood have access to fresh vegetables where they never would before, then that's a positive, transformative impact that I could have by supporting you. But so that's really what you want to focus on. What is the change or the betterment or the transformation taking place because of your organization? Again, kind of those before and after. Basically, what you're getting to is focus on the impact that you are having, not simply your activities. Now, I totally get it. You're a farmer's market. You have to tell people, hey, plums are only so much a pound today, right? You can get, buy tomatoes, or, just came in today. You can get so many, cherry tomatoes for this amount. I get that's part of, you have to tell people pricing, and that you are selling a product. But always in your storytelling, selling the product is your marketing. Your storytelling, right? That is really more, should be more focused on your fund development and your fundraising, is how you convey your messaging, and more your public relations aspect of things, right? Not just selling a product. So really, what is the impact that your farmer's market is having. And then what proof do you have that you are making an impact, or that there is a, this gets to what is your value of you existing, right? And what proof is that you, now I say here, you know, programs and services, obviously I'm talking to nonprofits, right? As a market, you have to, you know, well, we don't have services. It's like we sell a product. That's your service. You're selling a product. But you want to think about what proof is there that the transformation or the impact, that you really are having an impact. Like, for example, if I say that, we were located in a food desert. There was, you know, it's a really densely urban area. There were no there is an underserved area. There was no real fresh vegetables available for the bulk of people who don't have transportation. And so we're located in an area where they can want to and provide this transportation, or provide fresh vegetables that give them access to fresh produce that they didn't have access before. So how do you know that people are doing that? That might be your assumption, but how do you know? So you have to have some way of measuring your success. Personal testimonies are great for that, right? Because then it's the word of mouth of a community saying that, or testimonies of people who have cut down on their grocery bill or something by coming to the farmer's market, or whose lives have been transformed by coming to the farmer's market. You want to be able to have some tangible metrics of your success, that of why you exist. Because again, when people are giving money and they have a lot of options of where to give their money, they always want to know that their money is going to be well managed and really used in a way that's promoting the highest and best good for whatever that cause is. And so you always have to make sure that in your story, as you're telling your story, you're conveying to people, yes, we envision this impact, and this, we are having this impact, and this is the proof of the impact that we are having. Because again, it may be very obvious to you, but it's not always obvious to people on the outside of your organization. And now I know that you're thinking, well, yeah, that all sounds really good, but we've been around and our story is out there and people all know it. I'm going to stop sharing for a quick moment, and I hope that you are on the screen, because I'm going to ask you a question. Actually, I'll probably need to bring up my screen bring up my screen once again before I ask this question. But I'm going to show you something, and I want you to take a look at it. This is a great example of how people always assume that they know what's going on. And sometimes in a storytelling, we're like, man, we've been in this farmers market for the past 20 years. People know what we do. They know who we are. And you know, our story is very clear. And this is kind of gets to that. And so I'm going to show you something. And basically it's a sentence. And I want you to read the sentence very carefully, because I'm going to ask you a question about this sentence. So let me share my screen again and bring up this sentence and read it very carefully, because I'm going to ask you a question about it. So let me just get to that slide here. Just one moment. So I want you to read this very carefully. And if you've already seen this before, just don't give away the answers in the chat. But just read this very carefully. It's just one sentence, like I say, one simple sentence. The question I have for you is, how many F's are in this sentence? F's as in friend, family, feather. How many F's are in this sentence? You don't have to tell me your answers. Keep it to yourself for now. How many F's are in that sentence? I'm going to stop sharing in about 10 seconds, so hopefully you have your answer. Okay, hopefully everybody has an answer there. I'm going to stop sharing. Now, hopefully you will come on camera, but for the people on camera, show me by your show of hands how many fingers, how many F's were in that sentence. What's your answer? Just hold your hands up. Okay, I see 10, I see 8, I see 5, I see 5, I see, okay, one sentence, and we can't even agree on how many F's are in that sentence, and we're all reading it, right? And so that's how stories work. We're like, we've been around for a long time. Surely people know exactly what we do and who we are. Really? You can't even agree on one simple sentence. How many F's are located in the sentence, right? And I love this example. It has nothing to do with intelligence at all. It's just we get inundated with so much information on a daily basis that our brains automatically make shortcuts, because in order for us to just take in information. And so that is why advertisers know that they have to tell you something several times before you finally click in, because otherwise your brain will shortcut and you will miss key information. The correct answer is 10. There are 10 F's. So for those of you who had 5 and 4, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Nothing. Your brain is just used to working at fast speed, right? Typically what happens, and I will share it with the answer with you, is that most people, the shortcuts we take are with the smaller words. So for those of you who had 5, you probably weren't counting all of the ofs, right? And there were several of them because, and also our brains don't think of as an F sound, right? So you're counting the F's that actually sound like F's. But anyway, it's a great example of why you need to continually tell your story. Don't ever assume that people know who you are. I give the example of McDonald's. McDonald's has been selling hamburgers for what, almost 100 years now? When did they start? 30s, so almost 100 years now. But yet their commercials still advertise hamburgers. Don't we all know that McDonald's sells hamburgers? But they don't stop advertising. They don't stop telling people about come and buy a hamburger and French fries at McDonald's, right? Because they know that maybe there's some person out there who has not yet heard that McDonald's sells hamburgers and French fries, and we need you to come and buy them from us, right? But so you have to think of your market that way. It may have been around for the last 30, 40, 50 years. Don't assume, yeah, people know what we do. They know why we're here. They know. Don't ever assume that. Always make sure that your story is out there. Very, very important. Okay, so let's get back to the slide deck here. Okay, so what I always like to say is make sure your story, think of it as your hit song. And what makes a hit song is that it is in the old days, I'm really dating myself now too, of radio, hits were kept on rotation, meaning that every so often, if it was a hit song, it would be played again. So every half an hour or every hour, every 2 hours, the more popular the song, the more you would hear it. Nowadays, we have Sirius and XM. You can only hear what you want to hear. But in the days of radio, you could only hear what the radio stations were playing, and they would keep certain songs on rotation to hear it over and over and over and over again. That's how hits are made, because you hear it over and over and over again. Your story needs to be like your hit song. You need to be singing your nonprofit story, your farmer's market story over and over and over again. I love this. I use this particular image here. For those of you who know or who don't know, this is Beyonce, and this is a screenshot from her video, Single Ladies. Now that particular song, oh my gosh, when it came out, it became a huge hit over and over again. There were parodies of it on Saturday Night Live. She was on every time they were doing interviews. She's singing "Single Ladies, Single Ladies." It has even become part of our vernacular, right? Of just how we talk. I remember saying, having a conversation, talking about somebody who had not gotten married yet, talking with my grandmother, and my grandmother says, oh, he should have put a ring on it. What, excuse me? How do you even know that, right? But it's become so popular that you might not even realize put a ring on it comes from a song from Beyonce, because it has just become part and parcel of just how we talk now, right? And that's how your nonprofit story needs to be. People need to hear it so often that they can quote parts of it, right? You might not know all the lyrics to even Single Ladies, but I bet you know, put a ring on it, right? You might have heard that term, might have not known that that was Beyonce, right? Put a ring on it. And that's how your nonprofit story should be. People might not know all the details of the story, but when they hear it, they're like, oh, you know, I think you're talking about, isn't that you're talking about the farmer's market down in Portland? Yeah, that sounds familiar. That's what you want. That means that your story is out there, that people are talking about it, is gaining momentum. And that is very, very important. The reason why we asked in the chat, is your story written down, is another reason, because at the very least, your staff, your board, and your volunteers need to know that story. Don't wing it. Right? Don't wing it, because what happens then when people are asking your board about the story, they get one answer. They ask another board member, they get a whole nother answer. They ask volunteers, they get a whole nother answer. They ask the staff, get a whole nother answer. Now nobody's making the connection that everybody's talking about the exact same farmers market, because there's no connection, there's no cohesion in the storyline. You're just muddling your story. But what you want is you want your organizational people to know that story. They don't have to memorize it. They should know the hook. Put a ring on it at the very least, right? And have some talking points. So whenever they're asked, if people ask you, what are we about or why do we exist? There shouldn't be, if you have 60 people in your organization, there shouldn't be 60 different answers. There should be one answer. Everybody singing the same song from the same hymnal, right? Everybody's on the same page singing the same song. And so that's the key thing about having it written down, is that now you can train your people on how to talk about it so that they can emphasize the right things, to emphasize the vision, where you're going, what the world's going to look like, why you exist, and not simply, oh, well, tomatoes, you know, we've got a sale going on tomatoes today. Right? That is the importance of having it written down, so that you can use that as a training for how you talk about your organization. Very, very important. Otherwise, you're always getting something different, and your song, your story will never become a hit because it can't catch on, because there's every time somebody's talking about it, it's something different. They're hearing something different. They're never hearing the same story. And so your story is never able to catch on. So it's like a song. It's like creating a hit song that has to be sung over and over and over again. Now, at the time that Single Ladies came out, I was so sick of hearing Single Ladies. Oh my gosh. I'm like, enough already. And I'm sure Beyonce was tired of singing it. But that's the thing. Isn't McDonald's sick and tired of producing hamburger commercials? No, they're not. Why? Because maybe there's one person out there that doesn't know yet. And you always have to think of it that way. You as an organization, you're like, man, we told this story so many times. I was talking to a client of mine just very recently and asked, you know, what's your story? And he's like, oh, I used to say it all the time, but I just stopped talking about it because I've said it so often. And I'm like, you're tired of it, but I never heard it. Right? And that's how you might be as a farmer's market. It's like, you might be tired of singing your song and telling your story, but people out there aren't. And that's the key. You want that story out there. Find ways, create ways to get your story out there. Whether it's doing op-eds in the newspaper, putting flyers up, going door to door, whatever it is, make sure that story is out there, and don't ever stop telling what that story is. Basically, you are creating a fan base. When it comes to nonprofits don't like to think of themselves as creating fans, but you absolutely are. And I particularly have here, I always use this analogy of sports, because sports franchises are phenomenal at building fan bases. And you can learn a lot from how sports gets fans. For one thing, they know that it's human nature that people want to be part of something bigger. I like sports, especially when it comes down to the playoffs and the Super Bowl, but I am not one of those sports fanatics that watch every single game, every single season, know all the stats of all the players. That's not me. But, but it's human nature that people want to be a part of something bigger. What sports franchises know is that even though people can watch these games for free on TV, that they will still pay big bucks to go see it in person. Right? That always surprises me. I can watch it for free. Why pay that kind of money to go all the way down there? Because now you're part of something bigger, right? So this is always about when you're telling your story, you want opportunities where people can hear it in person. Don't always let your story be told electronically or like, well, gosh, we put out that newsletter. Oh my gosh, yeah, half that newsletter, half the time people get it, it's probably going in their spam folder or their junk mail. There has to be times where there is that personal connection. Farmers markets are great because to shop at a farmer's market, you actually have to come down to it, which is wonderful. So don't, kind of take that opportunity of getting people more involved. Something, I don't know what that might be creative about that. Maybe there is some place at the farmers market where you're just giving flyers, or you have your own, or there's people walking around talking about your farmers market or something. I don't know what it is, but people want to be a part of something bigger, especially when it comes to giving. They want to know that there is a legacy, and so that's what I love. Even with the farmers markets, like we're creating a legacy for this neighborhood or for this community or for Oregon about, make sure that this exists, in your children's lifetime or in your grandchildren's lifetime as well. That idea that this will last for a long time. The other thing that sports franchises do phenomenally well is they provide opportunity for people, for their supporters to become, to hear about and to learn about it. If you are a fan of football or any sport, I'm going to use football as an example. I believe there are 20 weeks in football. I believe. Again, I'm not a big fan, but I think there's about 20 weeks, not including the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And so, which means that during the football season, you can turn on the TV any given day, practically, any given channel, practically, and see your team play. You can get involved with your team, multiple exposures to watch a game, to become involved, to hear about it. Oftentimes, the only time that people can become engaged with a nonprofit is when they are asking for money at the annual fundraiser. That's the only time that now we're together, we're talking about it, we're pumping everybody up. There's some positive storytelling going on. Once a year does not create fans. If you only saw a football game once a year, you would not be a fan of that team. You would not go out and buy hats that look like cheese and put it on your head if you only saw that game once a year. It's not enough to create the excitement and the connection by once a year. So multiple opportunities for people to get involved with your organization. So that means you have to think, yes, we are selling produce, but what else are you doing to get your supporters and your donors involved in your organization? Not just when you're asking them for money, but how else can they get involved? Do you have, I don't know, I'm making this off the top of my head, volunteer days, or I don't know. I know that our local farmers market here, Pike Place Market in Seattle. Now they every year, this is not part of their fundraiser, but they do this during the summer, which, as you know, in the Pacific Northwest can be very short. They have an outdoor dinner, and they have that long table, and you can buy a ticket, and then there's just like this long outdoor dinner to get people down at the market, and all the food obviously is provided by all the vendors at the market, right? And it's just this wonderful time that people can come out. We have a lovely location if you've never been to the Pike Place Market, which is close to our waterfront. So it's lovely in the summer, down by the water, sitting outside under the stars. enjoying the farmers market. That's just one example. But what other examples or opportunities can people get engaged, become involved with your organization, other than just buying produce or once a year when you're asking for money, right? How else can people get involved? You need to have that in order to build a donor base. They need to have that connection to you, right? What is that? How many opportunities can they get engaged? And always, the heart of the matter is that if you don't open people's hearts, they will not open their wallets. So that's why whenever I'm talking about fundraising, people, their eyes glaze over. It's like, oh no, I don't want to ask people for money, right? Because you're thinking of, yeah, it's tough if you're talking to strangers, people who don't know anything about you. Now you're trying to get them all excited, but you've never bothered trying to get them excited before. The idea of engagement and storytelling is to make sure that people are warmed up to you before you ask for money. Because then it's an easier ask. What you want to do is you want to get people to the place. If you do engagement and storytelling and getting people excited, if you do that well, people will get to the place where they're like, oh my gosh, how can we help you? What can we do? How can we get involved? Once you get people to that place, then asking for money is becomes easier, right? But if this is somebody who doesn't know you and never heard of you, and now, oh my gosh, we're not going to meet our annual goal. Now you have to go out and beg for money, which is how it feels. That's now you get into that kind of icky, slimy, kind of used car hustler kind of feel, and nobody likes to do that, right? Yeah, and it's basically it's cold calling is basically what it is versus, a warm lead. And you always, what a salesman will always tell you is you want a warm lead. A warm lead is so much better than a cold call. And so storytelling is all about keeping everybody engaged and excited about what you want to do, so that when you ask for money, people are already warmed up and primed, ready to give. That is the purpose of storytelling. And so, of course, now, technically speaking, what this is a case statement, or you may have also, it's also called a case for support. I do say that it should be documented. So take the time to craft your story. Again, don't wing it. And so as you're crafting your story, this is when you want your, if you have marketing people, great, or great writers, people, anybody who's a great writer, awesome, is to actually document it. So, and not so that you're passing it out to the public, but so that you can have it to train your board, your staff, your volunteers on how to tell your story. Very, very important, so that you know specifically why we have value. What is the value proposition that we want to convey to people, right? That written document, so very, very important. That means that all of your messaging will be on brand as well. So that if you need to do social media, you don't have to make it up. It's like, just pull some sound bites from your case statement that's already written. It does say it is called a case statement, but that doesn't mean it's a one-line, two-line statement. A case statement is a document, typically like a brochure. A lot goes into that. Sometimes it'll have your priorities in it. Oftentimes it's used for fundraising. So it might even say, talk about what your funding goal is, but it's all about your story is really part of that as well. But it clearly defines who you are, why you are, what your value proposition is. And if you are looking for fundraising, why somebody should fund you. But having that written down is so important. So that goes beyond just, oh, well, we have a flyer. Oh, well, we have a brochure that we passed out. A case statement is a little more involved in that. Again, it's almost used as a training document to get talking points and really thinking through as a team, who are we? Why do we exist? Why are we important to this community? And what is the important message, the value that we want to convey, right? And not just leaving that up to chance. Here's just some key elements that go into every case statement. Of course, it's that story, that emotional appeal, talking about that transformation, very important. What you do, yes, but why? Always the why. Again, talked about this. I don't have to go necessarily into it again, but always very aspirational, talking about how the community will be different if we achieve our mission, how Oregon will be different, how the world will be different, how people will be different if we achieve our vision. And then the vision, right? Really focusing on the vision, which is the why, not the mission, which is the what or the how we do it. How you use your money, very important. If you are asking for money, right? Again, you shouldn't be asking for money all the time. If you do storytelling well, you shouldn't have to. That is another key element of storytelling, is that if you do it well, that when you ask for money, you will get a better response, right? So you don't have to be asking for money all the time. And when I say money, I'm not talking about buying your produce. I'm talking about just donation support, funding support. How you use your money. It's like people want to know that. And I always, I had somebody say once, well, they need a lot of money. And they're like, well, we didn't want to put that figure out there because we didn't want to intimidate people. I'm like, if you don't tell people how much money you need, then how will they know how much to give, right? I said the amount of money you need is not intimidating to people. Not being able to justify how that money is being spent, that's what cuts people off from getting. So if you need $1 million, you need $1 million, just as long as you can justify where that $1 million is going. What do you need $1 million for? I asked a client one time, they said they were trying to get $500,000. And I said, what is that for? And they said, we need to hire 2 part-time case managers. And I'm like, I am in the wrong field if a part-time case manager makes $250,000 a year. I'm like, what? $500,000 for 2 part-time case managers? And they're like, oh, well, we're going to do this and this and this and this as well. I'm like, well, then you need to say that, because that was not logical to me. And if you were asking me for money, I immediately would have said no, because I'm like, these people obviously don't understand money. It doesn't make logical sense of what they're trying to do. So are they just trying, or do they think I'm too stupid to understand or whatever, right? So if you need $1 million, that's great. Just be able to justify logically, feasibly, where that money is going, why you need it, right? Because people, always assume that people can understand that. And if you carry them along, and if they're passionate about what you do, then they will want to support you. So the amount of money is never intimidating, but usually what you find is there's never not enough backup information about where that money is going, which makes people intimidated to think, will my money be stewarded effectively and efficiently? And then, of course, case studies, anecdotes. Again, a lot of you, even in the chat, had this. You had personal testimonies. You had stories on your website. Those are always, always good. Why we deserve support, right? Again, you want to always be aspirational. The why should never be, because if you don't give, then we're going to have to close our doors forever, and you will be sad. And, it'll be sad for everybody. It'll be all your fault. It's always why we deserve support is because of the good you are doing, because of the impact that you're having, and because you can expand that good and expand that impact the more, if you were able to achieve these funding goals. So that's why you always want to focus on that. And then again, how people can help. Can they make a donation? How much donation do they need? Do you need volunteers? Do you need references for, or referrals for new staff people? Tell people what it is. How can they help you? And then specifically, if you're looking for a capital campaign, which is, and the only reason I listed here is because some people are like, oh, well, we're trying to do a capital campaign. Understand that a capital campaign is a secondary funding strategy, meaning you will have your primary strategy to just run your operations. So if you were doing a capital campaign, that means you are ready and willing to execute a secondary fundraising strategy, so that you will have 2 going on at the exact same time. Now, if you're thinking, wow, that is more than we anticipated, you're absolutely right. Capital campaigns, that's usually why you have to really think about, do we have the manpower for that? Oftentimes for a capital campaign, organizations have to hire out because they don't have the manpower. And now, if you have to hire out consultants and all those people to run that campaign, again, you're getting very expensive. So really think about that. A capital campaign is not a substitute for your regular organizational fundraising. It is always secondary. And then, as I said before, always make sure you have some key contacts and give people their names. Just the last couple of graphics that I just wanted to put in here is these graphics about why donors give, because it goes into your storytelling. 61% of donors claim that they choose which nonprofits to give to based on how well the organizations use their money. Again, so often organizations don't tell enough detail about how the money is being used and where it's being going. I always refer to money as people's blood, sweat, and tears. It is vacations not taken, time away from the kids' baseball, little league games that they couldn't attend to, overtime away from family, not spending dinners together because you're working. It is a lot. And now I gave, my blood, sweat, and tears to make that money. And now you want me to give my blood, sweat, and tears to you? You better have a good story, right? Because that's not an easy thing for me to let go of. And so how you use it, I want to know that is going to use the highest and best use. 41% of donors claim that a personal story from a nonprofit's beneficiaries influenced their decision giving. This is all about personal testimonies. Great. 44% of affluent donors stated that specific issues were the most important factor in their decision making. So this goes into really that value proposition of we are the only source of fresh fruit and veg in this urban area, of people who predominantly are already underserved or whatever, right? Your messaging is attracting those people who have a passion for that same cause. And then always I say this, donors, it's givers give. Givers give. Donors who give to one organization are more likely to give to several. So I love when if you ever go to, say, an art museum or the symphony or the ballet or anything like that, any of the performing arts, if you pick up a program, usually it'll just list, these are all the people that supported the Seattle Ballet, right? And it'll say, these are the people that gave $10,000 to the ballet. These are the people that gave $5,000. These are the people that donate $20,000 to the ballet. And you're thinking, how come somebody's not donating $20,000 to my nonprofit? This is key. Givers give. If somebody's given $20,000 over there, the likelihood is that they are given money elsewhere as well. So never think that, oh, well, that's just somebody who's interested in the performing arts. That's why they gave to the ballet, or that's why they gave to the art museum. Givers give. People who give in one area are much more likely to give in another. So don't be intimidated if you're finding donors and it's like, oh, well, those are just the donors who are giving over there. Givers give. Non-givers don't give. There's nothing you can say to a non-giver, to a stingy person, to make them give you money. Nothing. Givers give. Stingy people don't. So it's just important to know about. And then these are just a couple of reasons of why donors stop giving. 5% thought the charity didn't need them. Again, that's why you have to tell people how the money is being used, what you want to do with it, where you're trying to go. Because again, you may be thinking, surely doesn't everybody know that we're barely making it? No, they don't. The fact that you exist, they're like, wow, they must have a lot of money. They have a farmer's market. I thought farmer's markets were hard to start, but here they are. They've been around for 5 years. They must be doing great, right? So you have to tell people what you need, where you're trying to go. 8% got, again, goes back to 8% got no information about how the money was going to be used. Donors are much more savvy these days. There's so many scams and frauds out there. So donors are much more savvy. They really want to know. That really helps instill trust to be sure that you can talk about how the money is being used in a logical way. That doesn't mean $500,000 for 2 part-time case managers, right? It has to make sense to the donors, right? 9% had no memory of supporting the organization. Very interesting. So often, once you get that money from a donor, those nonprofits never talk to them again. It's like, yay, we got the money. you've missed the whole point. The point is to build a relationship. And if you build the relationship and the connection, that money should not just come once, it should come continually. But if your sole goal was just to get that one donation and then you cut that donor off, the likelihood is that they will then turn their giving to somebody else where they feel connected to. So again, that's where storytelling comes in. It's about keeping that ongoing connectedness in some way to your organization. 13% never got thanked. You would think that would be such an obvious thing, right? Just sending a thank you note. And I had an organization said, well, we send thank you notes to everybody who gave over $200. I'm like, well, what if you gave under? I mean, what that money, might have been just as difficult for that person to give, but they never got thanked. And so if you don't even say thank you, likelihood you're not going to get money again. Yes, obviously there's those donors that pass away. We won't get into it right here, but think about planned giving. Planned giving is giving that can be in a will or a life insurance policy. And I know people think, oh, that's just so morbid. But the fact remains is that you can't take it with you. And what planned giving is, it's securing today the money that you will need 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because true enough, you plan giving, it's in a life insurance policy. You're not going to get that money until the person passes away, or if it's in their will or their estate, you won't get that till they pass away. But if you plan on being around 10, 15 years, you're going to need money 10, 15 years from now. Plan a huge source of money in planned giving. So something to think about. 18% thought the charity had poor service or communication. Yikes, right? Something very, very simple, just being professional or friendly or having, customer care. And I get it. I totally get it. You're like, oh my gosh, we have such a skeleton crew as it is. We can barely do what we need to do right now. And now we have to somehow be better in our communication. Well, think about that. That's oftentimes where, sometimes I ask nonprofits, how are you utilizing volunteers? And they're like, oh, well, our volunteers, we use them to help clean up or help set up or stuff like that. Sometimes the highest and best use of volunteers is actually on those unpaid staff positions. You don't have the money to hire staff, use volunteers. Now, granted, those volunteers are not going to be there, for the next 2 years, but you can break it down in projects. So maybe it's a project for maybe for 1 month, you hire some, have some volunteers who can just reach out, make some phone call and connect with the people, make sure that your customer service is working okay or something like that, right? They can just have a personal connection or something, right? But if you've got people willing for their time and their energy, make sure you're getting the best use of that. And that's usually having them do something that's really aligned with their own skill set. Again, they're not getting paid for it. So don't try to have a 6-month volunteer project. That volunteer will be burnt out before 6 months is up. I figure you can usually get about 2 months time from somebody who's not being paid. But so what do you really need that maybe you need some graphic support, graphic design help. You can't afford a graphic designer. Maybe it's that you can get a volunteer, kid come in and help you with that. Or think of those really high needs that you might need. Those are the great use of volunteers. And then 30% thought that others were more deserving. Again, that comes into storytelling. It's because that's saying that somebody else, again, when it comes to nonprofits, there is no singularly unique nonprofit out there. There's millions of nonprofits. And trust me, there's millions of other farmers markets all doing the exact same thing. So if somebody thinks that another nonprofit that's doing something just like you is more deserving, more than likely it's because of how they're telling their story. That person feeling more connected to their story than they are to your story. And then of course you do get that, 50% could no longer afford to give. So that's part of why you really need to always be expanding and increasing the number of people who hear your story and that you draw into the fold, because that is just the nature of the game. That even if you had, 10,000 people in your support base, if you never got another person, ultimately over time, that support base would flatline because that's just the nature. It's about a 20% attrition rate industry-wide. And so that's why you always have to be continually bring in new people all the time. Because yes, life happens, and maybe somebody lost their job, they can't give anymore. And if you are not about trying to bring in new people, then ultimately you'll be affected when life happens and something happens to your stable of donors who can no longer give. So I know I was talking a mile a minute. Oh my gosh. But I didn't hear any questions. But if you have any questions now, so happy to answer any specific questions that any of you might have about how to start implementing your own nonprofit story. Any questions? No questions. So with no questions, I'm expecting to hear some amazing stories. Okay. Is it Radia? Did I see your hand up?
Yeah. Hi. I couldn't find the hand up emoji.
No problem.
No problem. It's Radia, but I didn't really have a question. I think I just wanted to make a comment because you said you worked for the Gates Foundation. I heard Melinda on an episode of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, and she was talking so much about how she's cultivating and teaching her wealthy friends the joy of giving and how to, like, how much comes from that. Like when you were talking about planned giving, I'm like, we're doing people a favor because people want to build legacy. They want to be remembered as someone who did beautiful things in the world. And there does just seem like there's this disconnect. Um, I'm on the other side. I don't know if you saw that I don't work for a farmer's market, but I've done like a lot of volunteering. And some of those reasons around like why people stop donating is also like the reasons people stop volunteering. And the storytelling element just I think is so powerful. And I love that you're talking about this in terms of it's also just the story of, everyone gets tired of their stump speech or their hit song, as you said, but it's so interesting. We're all like little kids, right? It's not just that we don't know the answer, but it's like we like the answer and it's giving us pleasure to rehear the answer. Tell me that story again, right? You might be tired of telling it, but I want to hear it again. How am I part of this? And I just find it, yeah, it's really powerful, all these things you're sharing. So I want to share that. And I shared I shared this podcast. I just listened to it today, but I put it in the chat. It talks about a lot of this. And it's really encouraging to me to hear people who are more expert in this field saying, yeah, this is something that's kind of systemic. And yeah. So good, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate those comments. And it's so true. And like I say, this is the first one of a series of fund development webinars, but I always start fund development with the story, because without the story, everything else falls away. And people are always like, well, I don't want to know about the story. Just show me where to get the money. I'm like, without the story, you're not getting the money, okay? Because it's the story that makes people want to give you the money. And so part of the storytelling, again, it's that idea of being creative about how do we, maybe creating ways of how to tell our story in a new way, how to get it out to a new audience. How do we, how can we reach beyond the borders of this neighborhood where we're located to get our story for other people to hear it? And that is a question that you and your team will have to answer. But that's a great thing. Sometimes volunteers are great for that. If you could just get some volunteers and their sole reason for being is to go out and share your story with as many people as possible. That's what they do, right? And again, train them in how to say that, right? Don't just send them out there. But that is a great thing to do. And all they have to do is, and just send us the list of people that you told your story to. That's all. But think of creative ways of how do we get our story out there. And again, get it. You're at farmers market. It's like, man, I don't have time to be out there telling my story. I'm busy right now working with vendors, keeping this operation from falling apart, right? I'm the only one here, or whatever. And that's where volunteers can really come into play. And if it's, again, something as simple as, here's how to tell our story, go out that and share that with as many people possible and report back to us on who you told, right? Something as simple as that, but be creative about that. Or creating opportunities, sometimes like join us on Zoom. We are just like really excited about whatever it is you're excited about, your vision or your strategic plan, new board members, new staff members, join us on Zoom for free. And then people can just, it's a live opportunity where they can ask you questions, you can tell the story, but be creative on getting your story out there. So very important. You brought up a great point. How do we get our story in front of people of means, right? High net wealth individuals. How do we get them to hear our story? That's a creative brainstorming session that you all should have. Not that difficult, honestly. I will give you a really quick tip. Probably the kind of low-hanging fruit of high net wealth individuals is professional athletes. The reason I say that is because they're typically young. Because they're young, they don't have all of those barriers between them and the public as, some CEO of Starbucks. So they're young. And plus, being a professional athlete, part of being a professional athlete is being part of the hometown team. And I don't know if it's in their athletic contracts or not, but it's about being out there, giving back to the community service. So you will always find that the professional athletes are usually always involved in some type of community service, because I think that's part of the phenomena of being part of the home team. So, and almost every sports franchise probably has a philanthropic arm. I personally worked with the Portland Trailblazers Foundation. So, and I know here in Seattle, we have the Seahawks Foundation. So almost every major sports franchise has an actual philanthropic arm, because they recognize if we want fans to feel like they are part of the community and we are part of them, we have to show that we are giving back. We have to be involved. So sports athletes are kind of that low hit. And again, with today's sports contracts, oh my gosh, if you're a professional athlete, typically you're almost immediately, 10 tax brackets up from the average person, right? If not a millionaire. Those sports contracts are huge. So it's like it's a good entry level into how do we at least connect, how, because people always say, well, we don't know any millionaires. And I always say, well, then you need to meet some. They're not that difficult. And sports is kind of that low hanging fruit to connect with people with some means. Any other questions or comments before we go? We've got about 3 minutes left. I don't know. Amanda, do you have anything that you want to wrap up with? I meant to have like a evaluation. I apologize. I didn't have the link here. I'll be sure to send that to Amanda. I'll send the slide deck as well, so you will all get a copy of that with the recording, and I'll have that evaluation link there. I really appreciate your comments. And again, this was just one of 4 in a series of fund development webinars. Amanda?
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you want to leave us with a little bit about what's coming up next? And we can put the link in there about signing up for those. I know you had wanted, each one of these builds on each other, and it would be great to have some of the people who were at the first one at the next ones too.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for saying that. Yes. So they all kind of scaffold on each other. It's kind of building up on your fund development. So it starts with storytelling, which is this one. The next one, which is going to be, I believe it's November 12th, going to be on revenue diversification. Again, so often nonprofits think that, oh, I just need to get that grant to fund my nonprofit. Grants are only one way. There is a multitude of ways of funding a nonprofit. The more diverse your revenue stream, the more sustainable your nonprofit will be. So we'll talk about in revenue diversification, how to tap into some of those other sources of revenue so that all your funding eggs are not in one basket. And then in February, in the new year, I think it's February 18th, we'll talk about donor engagement. And that is specifically really those targeted things on how do we get more people, how do we get more donors, how do we build out and expand our donor base and, get more donations and that type of thing. Some really specific tactics on that. And then talk the fourth one is really how to remain community centric as well. And that's one of the things that I really love about even farmers market is that they're much more community centered, right? And so how to incorporate that into your storytelling and to bring along the community in what you're doing and not leave the community behind in search of money. And so often that is what nonprofits do. They're like, oh, we're serving this community, but we're going to focus on over here if we want money. And that doesn't have to be necessarily too divergent forces. You want the community that you're serving, you want them to have buy-in. So talking about how to remain community centric, how to keep that pipeline of from the community through your organization, whether that's in board leadership, staff, or volunteerism, how to keep the community connected and interested. So you're not just serving the community actually becomes part of who you are as an organization. So I think that's really important, especially for something like a farmer's market, a community kind of based organization like that. So those are the four things, but once you have all those things together, those to me are the building blocks of a great fund development plan there. And of course, in that, how do we put together that fund? Once you have all those building blocks, how do we build that funding strategy, right? And really get that into play. Okay. I think we're
Thank you, Pamela. This was wonderful, and I can't wait to come back in November and have you here again.
Hope to see you all there.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.